Welcome back to part 3 of Hunting the Hunters, chapter 6 of A Thora Silentblade Tale. With Alindel and Zarek pinning the gnolls down, and Dwayne charging around the tunnels, Thora took the opportunity to quickly explore a tunnel and try to find where the dwarves may have gone. Throwing caution to the wind, the usually careful soldier ran as quickly as possible, heavy feet slapping the stone floor. Coming to a complete stop, there was a brief moment where everything seemed to be standing still. The gnolls in the chamber stared wide-eyed at the sudden appearance of the dwarf in front of them, just as Thora stared back at them. As the hunters and their hyenas sprang into action, Thora raised both blades to defend against the oncoming creatures. "Looking for me?" Thora shouted at them, trying to taunt the hunters. Earlier, the dwarf had considered trying to pretend to be one of the miners to draw them away, and, hopefully, these beasts weren't very bright. The dwarf turned and ran full out back down the tunnel towards Zarek and Alindel, who were rushing to catch up. With any luck, those gnolls would run right into an ambush. Alindel and Thora met up first, ready to team up against the hunters, but then the elf came rushing past. Faster than both of them, Zarek quickly floated down the hall, not heeding the yelled warning that Thora shouted too late. Instead of the gnolls rushing into an ambush, it was the ranger who found himself surrounded by a hungry pack of hunters. Zarek did his best to hold the ground, but there were simply too many of them as the swarm thrashed through the elf and then headed for Alindel. Squeezing by along the wall, Thora rushed behind one of the gnolls, trying to take its attention off of the bard. Together, the dwarf and the dragonborn took care of business, shoving their way into the melee. Somewhere in the echoing tunnels, Thora could hear the sound of a wooden peg leg slamming repeatedly into the rough stone of the tunnels. It seemed to be getting closer. The dwarf locked eyes with the snarling beast standing atop the elf's rapidly bleeding body, and attempted to shove him out of the way with a kick, trying to clear space to reach Zarek. With all eyes on Thora now, Alindel took advantage, weaving lyrical melodies and rhythms that seemed to soothe the soul. The elf gasped for air as he came back around to the middle of the battle, a large gnoll's underside hovering mere inches from his face. Charging forward with a shoulder down, Thora slammed the gnoll backwards and began swinging wildly, trying to get the pack's attention. From somewhere behind the hyena-faced creatures came a blast of magic and a shouting wizard, boxing the beasts in. Blows rained down upon the dwarf, but somehow Thora found a final burst of adrenaline to keep standing, swinging, while the others surrounded the gnolls and took them out one by one. The blood in Thora's eyes was making it difficult to see, and the dwarf wasn't sure at the moment how much of it was the gnolls. There was a voice in the dwarf's head that suggested taking a nice nap, just a quick rest. But the desire to live was too strong to give in to that tempting thought. All around were the sound of blades swinging in the air, clanging against armor, or digging into flesh. That was the only focus at the moment. Through the chaos, the dwarf could see the determined looks of the others. They would do no surrendering today to these gnolls. Eventually, there was but one of the beasts left. It swung wildly at Thora with the sort of desperation shown in one's final moments. After missing Thora's shoulders by a narrow margin, the creature paused and shrugged their shoulders. "Surrender?" came the questioning plea from the suddenly docile creature. Thora responded to the request quickly and silently, knocking the gnoll out with the pommel of a sword. The beast slumped to the ground at Thora's feet with a thud, and the group finally had a moment to catch their breath. Kneeling down, Thora reached into their pack to find some rope to tie up the unconscious gnoll. When the dwarf turned around again to tie up the gnoll's claws, it was clear by the lifeless eyes and still chest that the beast was no longer in the land of the living. Perhaps it had been bleeding more than Thora thought. Perhaps the impact with the ground had fatally wounded it. Or perhaps it had something to do with an oddly shaped indent in the creature's head that seemed roughly the size of the bottom end of a wooden leg.